We often look to the past to understand ourselves. Tonight, we turn our attention to the year 1868 and the solemn story of Thomas C. Hindman. It's a case that reminds us that behind historical records are real people whose lives were irrevocably changed by the events that transpired. This is their story, is best as it can be told. On the quiet evening of September 27, 1868, in the town of Helena, Arkansas, former Confederate Major General Thomas Hindman sat in his parlor reading a newspaper. His children played nearby. From the darkness of the garden outside, an unknown assassin took aim through an open window and fired a shotgun. The blast shattered the domestic peace, mortally wounding Hindman and creating one of the most enigmatic and politically charged unsolved murders of the Reconstruction era. Before the Civil War, Thomas C. Hindman was known as a fire eater, a fierce and uncompromising Democratic politician who championed the cause of states' rights. When the war began, he rose to the rank of Major General in the Confederate Army, becoming the military commander of Arkansas. His leadership was defined by harsh discipline, ruthless efficiency, and a willingness to impose martial law to conscript men and resources. While effective as a commander, his methods made him one of the most feared and disliked figures in the state. He was a man of extreme conviction, known for making powerful and lasting enemies. The Arkansas that Hindman returned to after the war was a state in turmoil. The era of Reconstruction had placed the state under the control of the Republican Party, led by Governor Powell Clayton. This new government, supported by federal troops and the votes of newly enfranchised African Americans, was viewed as illegitimate by the majority of the state's white, ex-Confederate population. In the shadows, a secret war was being waged by organizations like the Ku Klux Klan, who used terror and violence to suppress black voters and undermine Republican rule in a bid to redeem the South. After a period of self-imposed exile in Mexico, Thomas Hindman returned to Arkansas in 1867 and embarked on a political course that shocked everyone. Instead of joining the hardline ex-Confederates who sought to violently resist Reconstruction, Hindman adopted a pragmatic and controversial new strategy. He argued that the Confederacy was lost and that the old ways were dead. He publicly accepted the terms of the 14th Amendment, which granted citizenship to former slaves, and began to advocate for a new departure for the Democratic Party, a political coalition that would accept and even court the votes of black citizens. Crucially, he openly and forcefully denounced the violent tactics of the Ku Klux Klan. Hindman's new political stance left him dangerously isolated. To the hardline Democrats and the Ku Klux Klan, his willingness to accept black suffrage and his condemnation of their methods were acts of unforgivable treason. They branded him a traitor to the lost cause and the principle of white supremacy. At the same time, the ruling radical Republicans, under Governor Clayton, viewed him with deep suspicion. They saw his talk of a biracial political coalition not as a genuine change of heart, but as a cynical and dangerous ploy by their most cunning rival to regain power.
In the fractured landscape of Reconstruction politics, Thomas Hindman had become a man without a party, a target for enemies on all sides.
The aftermath of the shooting was as dramatic as Hindman's own tumultuous life. Mortally wounded, bleeding profusely from wounds to his jaw and chest, he staggered out of his house and onto the front porch. A crowd of concerned citizens had quickly gathered. There, in the flickering lamplight, he delivered a final, impromptu speech. He declared that he had been struck down by an assassin, but that he forgave his killer. He reaffirmed his love for his country and his commitment to his new political vision for a peaceful and reconstructed South. After speaking for several minutes, he collapsed and was carried back inside. He died from his wounds the following morning.
The investigation into the assassination of Thomas C. Hindman was doomed from the start. The intense political hatreds of the era made a fair and impartial inquiry impossible. The local authorities in Helena were unable to produce any significant leads, and a cloud of suspicion and accusation immediately enveloped the state. Rumors and theories swirled, but no concrete evidence ever emerged to definitively identify the killer or the conspiracy behind them. The investigation was a microcosm of the era itself, a chaotic and partisan affair that ultimately failed to produce justice.
The most prominent and logical theory pointed directly at the Ku Klux Klan. Hindman had become one of their most high-profile public critics, and he was a former Confederate general, which made his stance all the more treacherous in their eyes. His murder fit their well-established pattern of using political assassination to eliminate opponents and terrorize the population. They had the motive, the means, and the operational secrecy to carry out the attack. To many, both then and now, the Klan remains the most likely culprit, having silenced a powerful voice that had turned against them. However, Hindman's supporters and a significant portion of the Democratic Party promoted a different theory. They claimed that Hindman had been assassinated by agents of the Republican state government. They argued that Governor Powell Clayton and the radical Republicans feared Hindman more than any other man in the state. They saw him as a brilliant political strategist, the one man capable of uniting a moderate opposition party that could legally and legitimately challenge their hold on power. In this version of events, Hindman was killed not for betraying the Old South, but for being too great a threat to the new Republican order. No one was ever arrested, tried, or convicted for the murder of Thomas C. Hindman. His assassin, like so many perpetrators of Reconstruction-era violence, was protected by a wall of silence and political chaos. The case remains one of the great unsolved political murders in American history. Hindman's story is a complex one, the tale of a man who transformed from a secessionist firebrand into a pragmatic and controversial advocate for a new path forward. His assassination is a tragic symbol of the violent, uncompromising nature of his time, a testament to the immense dangers of attempting to find a middle ground in a society at war with itself. Thank you for spending this time with us. Reflecting on these past events is a way of remembering the individuals involved and the impact their stories had on their communities. If you have any thoughts on today's case, we invite you to share them respectfully in the comments below. We hope you will join us again for our next true crime case.